The following is a recording of a live masterclass that I gave on the mindset of winners. And we think a lot differently than most people do. And that's why we have the kind of results and we get the kind of achievements that most people can't even fathom. And it's not a long masterclass. I do cover a lot of ground. I start off with what I see as the paradox of 21st century achievement, and how it's never been easier than it is today. To be great. To instantly separate yourself from a majority of the population. But there's another side to that where things get really interesting. And so I talk about that in the very beginning. Then I introduce something that I learned from Stephen Kotler, what he calls the habit of ferocity, which I am just learning is just insanely important. I always knew it was important, but now I'm just realizing how it's everything. If you want to think this way, think the same way that winners think and achieve these kind of things in your own life. You have to think this way, and you have to actually, cultivate this habit of ferocity. And so I explain what that is, and I also talk about doing your best and what that actually means. And it's a deceptively simple idea. There's a lot more to it than most people even realize. And most people are just not even close to doing their best. But it's my earnest belief, and we'll talk about this in the video. If you actually do your best, it's almost literally impossible to fail. And so I explain why, how, everything in the masterclass. And so no further preamble or anything. It's about a half hour long. Let's get right into it. And we'll start with the paradox of 21st century achievement. Oh, one more thing. So if you want to show up live to the next masterclass, it's only for members of the Competitive Advantage community, my private business mastermind on School. And so that's basically where I take anybody who joins, right? I take them from zero or wherever they are to $1,000 per month or more in revenue in their online business. So if you're already doing better than that, my promise is to add at least another 1,000. But if you're starting from zero, I can help you make that first 1,000, which is once you get to that first $1,000 online, it's just like a rocket ship from there. You'll realize this once you're inside. I am so unbelievably on my members' side. I push and drive and inspire to levels that were not even visible to them before they joined. So if you want to join the next live call, the first link in the description is where you join. But let's just dive into the masterclass right now. I'm going to start with something that I see as sort of the paradox of 21st century achievement, especially in the last few years. But I've noticed this across the board, how it's never been easier to stand out, to be great, but it's only because most other people are just, it's almost like they're not even trying. People's brains are fried from social media and just toxins in food, toxins in the air, just so many things just sapping people's energies, the stress and speed of modern life. It's wearing a lot of people down, and it's holding people back from really achieving what they could, right? But the interesting thing about that is, so it's never been easier to stand out, never been easier to be great. The bar is so low, it's on the ground, guys. You step over this bar and instantly you're ahead of 70. I've made that up, but it's 70% of the population is just not even trying, right? However, that being said, at the very, very, very top, this is where the paradox comes in. The competition is almost literally insane. To be the very best of the best, you have to be just psychotic about it, and you have to be so dialed in. And you have, people who are. I'll draw many sort of bodybuilding and gym related examples later on. But there's, to sort of illustrate it here. There's, if you just want kind of a half decent, physique that you stay healthy and fit, and that's a wonderful goal. There's nothing against that. It doesn't take too much, right? You just move more, eat well, sleep, and train hard in the gym. Sometimes, and you can have cheat meals and things like that. There's nothing wrong with with the scrolling on social media every so often, or having a cheeseburger. That's not gonna not gonna matter. But at the very highest levels, you have people who are recording every single calorie that crosses their lips, right? They're getting their blood levels checked. Obviously, there's performance enhancing drugs in sports, right? like people are doing every single thing to have an edge. They're sleeping like 8-9 hours a night. Very specific training protocols and like just supplements dialed in, and just everything at the very top level. And to compete again, like to compete at that level, you have to be absolutely insane. Like it has to, like you have to live in a box, to be the best. So it's kind of the responsibility is on you to sort of to ask yourself how great you want to be, like what kind of effort you're willing to expend, and what kind of results that you want to get. Because you can put yourself into any of those groups, like you can join that very top echelon, but you have to realize what it takes. And we're going to talk about that later on. This attitude is not something that these guys and women are born with. It's something that you develop over time. Nobody's born being extremely just fantastically disciplined. Like it's something that you develop over time, but you really have to ask yourself, like, how important is this to you? Like, how great do you want to be? And if you just want to kind of drift along with everyone else, you absolutely can do that. Like the bar is so you basically do what everyone else does, but then you'll get what everyone else has, and you sort of have to ask yourself whether you actually want that. It's very true that there's almost literally no competition at the very top. And, there's a great, not a great, sort of like a almost funny line, how it's never crowded along the extra mile, and that's so true. Like it's pretty empty up there. Like once you actually get, past, a certain level, there's very little competition, and or at least the number of people that you're competing against is very, very low. So it's never been easier, never been harder at the same time, which is a fascinating paradox, right? So I want to introduce you to this guy. He's one of my biggest influences. Has been for years and years and years. His name is Tom Platz. And I will be speaking more about him very soon. And actually, he's one of those guys I would absolutely love to have him as a guest on the podcast. Like I am going, or even to speak to the group, right? I really want to just have him. I want to talk to the guy, right? Anyway, he was a former Mr. Olympia contender. In the 1980s. So he's obviously, see him on the right here with his little tiny teacup. He was big in the 80s. I think in the night he never got better than third place in the Mr. Olympia, which is the top bodybuilding competition. But he was very, very close to being the absolute best bodybuilder in the world. And they say he had like the greatest legs in bodybuilding, and he basically legendary for like just heavy squats, and really intense training. So I want to talk about a few things that he said that he believes, and that he sort of imparted to me without ever meeting me, of course, just with through videos I've seen from him, interviews and things like that. Just the mindset that I've kind of adopted from him, and it's really responsible for a tremendous amount of my growth and achievement, for sure, but just my mindset, attitude, and just my quality of life, the way that I move through the world. And he's really made a tremendous impact on me. And just what he said, like it applies, like we'll talk about this later on, but it applies to so many more things than just bodybuilding. Like, people think that it's like, oh, that's just the gym, but the gym is life, as we'll discover, right? And so one of the things he always says is that there's always 5 more. And so what that means is, like, no matter when you get to the very, very end of a workout, or literally any single thing that you're doing, and you think that you're finished, that you couldn't possibly do any more, he always believes that there's always 5 more. So in his case, it's 5 more reps. So like when when you're going down for I won't launch into like squat training protocols or anything, but he was famous for his like high rep, like heavy weight, like squat workouts, and like he's going down for like 50 reps with like hundreds and hundreds of pounds on his back, right? And he would get to like the end of like that one set of squats, and he would think that he's done, but he knew that he's not. There's always 5 more, and that goes for bodybuilding. It goes for your work. If you get to the end of your day, say you have like a sales job to just maybe just grab an easier example. You've been on the phone all day, you've been working the phones, and you've been just receiving like rejection after rejection, and you don't think you're making any progress. It's a total slog, and you get to the end of the day, and you thought you've given everything. There's always five more. You can do five more, and like that's been so absolutely true. And most people will never get that far. Like they never even realize that there's five more inside of them. And like, how could they? They've never gone to that place, and which kind of brings me to one of his sort of very interesting ideas actually is, and this takes a little tiny bit of explanation, but you have to achieve failure. Now, failure for him means in the gym. So failure, like training to failure, is when you lift basically, past like or right up until total like complete muscular exhaustion, right? Like you physically cannot move the weight anymore. Like that is muscular failure. And you can absolutely make progress, without training to failure. Absolutely, like you don't have to train this way, but it's one of the best ways, one of the best training methodologies to achieve this like world-class physique. So like everybody who's basically anybody in bodybuilding trains to failure, and maybe that's a heavy no, maybe that's not completely true. Like I said, you can absolutely achieve an incredible physique without doing this. But everybody at the top level knows what failure looks like, and they've gone there, right? And what's interesting about like what Tom Platz says here about achieving failure is like it's absolutely an achievement, because like you don't want, like you want to give up far before failure actually happens. Like when you start to feel pain in the muscle, like that's just a little bit of lactic acid building up in the muscle, like a little bit of pain. Like that's not failure. Failure is like 10 reps past that. And to go to that place, because like it's it's by definition an extremely painful place to be. Like nobody wants to train to failure. Like that sucks, and I do like, my like 5 workouts a week right now, I'm on the very last set, which is what Dorian Yates, another fantastic influence on me, that's what he used to do. He used to, you take the last set of every exercise and just go all out, like just 100% failure. And so it's a very real achievement, because you have to push yourself past where you want to stop. And like where you want to stop is average. Like it's where everyone else stops. Like they stop because it starts to hurt, but then you're not getting any growth, right? Like muscle growth is an adaptation to stress. Like you have to stress your muscles the fuck out. Sorry for swearing. and they adapt. They come back bigger and stronger. They realize that they've been exposed to a load that's heavier than they've experienced before, that they've been able to handle thus far, and they realize that they have to adapt. They have to get stronger. They have to build themselves back up. And like if that doesn't sound like life, right? That's exactly what's happening. You achieve fail. You go further. You go far beyond what you think that you're capable of, and then you prove to yourself that it's possible. You prove to yourself that you can do it, and you go to that place. You achieve failure, and you like if that's a permanent, like this is not something that you do every single set of every single exercise. You can't live your entire life, pushing yourself to the absolute maximum. You have to rest and recover. Like that's a big part of it. But if you never go to that place, you're leaving so much of your potential on the table, right? You're missing out on so much growth. And that goes for the gym, that goes for life, that goes for everything. And so you have to achieve failure. And like that's one thing that Tom has taught me, and it's never left me. And it's done so much for me, just having this mindset, it's one of the most important lessons that I have to share, And so this is him again. Like just the legs on the dude, just absolutely insane. Greatest legs in bodybuilding. And I don't know how many pounds that is. That's probably close to like 405. That's probably like 495, but 500 pounds or whatever on his back right now. And he would do sets of like 50, which is just insane. And so as it says here, you can read it. The psychological tools I've gained from bodybuilding will never atrophy. And So people used to ask him all the time, like nowadays, especially because he's in his 60s, and man, his legs still look like that. By the way, I mean obviously he's like not exactly like that. He's a little bit older, of course, but like you just like look up like pictures of him now, like pictures of Tom Platz's legs now, and it's basically like that. You can tell that he's a lot older, but like he's kept most of like it's insane. But people ask him, like, you gained all this muscle in the 1980s, and only to lose it now. Like, don't you think that's really sad? And like so, I don't think that they're trying to make him feel bad or anything. That they actually want to know. At least most people that ask him this question want to know. Like, do you ever regret putting in that much effort if you're just going to lose it later? And he says no, absolutely not. Like it reflects in this quote, like the psychological tools that bodybuilding has given him will never go away. They'll never, like, atrophy is to sort of like reduce, like you basically lose your muscle mass over time as you get older. Like your muscles atrophy if they're not constantly like stressed, right? So he's not training the same way that he did in the 1980s. So he's lost quite a bit of muscle mass. But does that mean the whole process wasn't worth it? And absolutely not, because like who he became, like the person that Tom Platz had to become in order to make it to that level is so totally worth it. Like it's not just lifting a bunch of weights and putting them back down in the same place. Like it's so much more than that. And like I said, I mean, the gym is life. We don't have too much more to cover, but like that's one of the things that I had to talk about here. Motivation is very very unreliable. I don't think that I mean, I know that like it can't be depended upon. You can always rely on discipline though, and like discipline will never fail you, right? Whereas motivation just kind of comes and goes depending on how you feel. But there are two sources of motivation, of power, if you will, that you can draw upon, and they kind of come from like a light place within you and a dark place within you. And I don't think that ideally, ideally, I think that this is actually a question that I've kind of been kind of wrestling with, struggling with myself. But whether like whether you have to or you can sort of incorporate both, or if the purpose is to sort of move away from the sort of dark motivation. But I guess what I mean is that this past year has been awfully rough for me personally, and some of you have known the details, and I don't like I've never held this back, but I lost my part-time job as a nightclub bouncer, right? And so this was back in July or something like that, and it was because of an assault charge that was eventually dropped because I didn't do anything, and like it was justice prevails, right? But the way it worked out, and this is a long story short, they changed the laws around like licensing. So like security at bars had to have like a security license, and if you were charged with any crime, you couldn't apply for the license. And so I couldn't apply for the license, so I had to give up that job. So I wasn't like fired, but I lost my job because of it. And for something that I didn't even like, that I had no part in, and I was like, again, I don't want to launch into a big story, but I like that job was a huge like positive part of my life for years and years and years. And I was at that bar 2 nights a week, 3 nights a week, most weeks, for a decade. My like all my best friends went there, and like it was the best best part of my week. I would look forward to my time working there, and like nobody ever believes me when I said that, but it's absolutely true. Like I loved my time there, and it was taken away from me by because of something that I didn't even do, right? And it was very 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 rough on me. But like I'm not complaining whatsoever, because I was sort of in this past year I was able to sort of access that sort of dark motivation, that dark energy, right? And I used that like the just massive anger and frustration. Like I was really really upset, and like I am still I'm still sort of like dealing with it, but like I had basically all my friends taken away from me, right? And like the source of income for sure. I mean, I don't know, geez, maybe the whole thing cost me maybe $15,000-$20,000, right? And I wasn't able to travel to the States because of this sort of thing. Again, this is a whole like details that aren't really important, but like I had to sort of hold off on any sort of trips. And I had like podcast appearance, like there were invitations and, business masterminds and things that I could have gone to and, connected with people that lived in the States. Like I had to travel to places like Miami and, there's a podcast in Malibu that they wanted me to show up for. And like, I can't go to California with this criminal thing. Right. So I had to miss out on all that stuff. So instead of sort of wallowing in that, I was never more motivated than like I have been in my entire life, than I have been in this last year. Like every single workout, every single like time that I sat down at my computer to work, I would think about how angry I was at this situation. How could they do this to me, right? But instead of instead of letting that keep me down and sort of not using that energy for anything, I channeled it, or I funneled it into making my life better, like improving my business. And like I've made more progress in the gym in this past year than I have in the last 3 years. And it's just been absolutely insane. And so if you have that sort of that source of power, like some negative things happen to every single one of us, and injustices, of course, and just shitty people doing shitty things, and that you can use that to that can either keep you down or you can use it to win. And I chose, I made the conscious decision to use that to win, and I wasn't going to let that. I wasn't going to let them win, by keeping me down. I was going to use this gift that they gave me, this extra motivation, this fire, this real source of power, and I used it to grow my business to levels that it's like I would not, I do not think that I would be at the level my business is at now. Definitely wouldn't be physically where I am now, in terms of like physique wise. If I hadn't had this happen to me. So in a very real sense, I was able to sort of transmute this very negative thing that happened to me into one of the best things that happened to me. And that's a very real skill that you can develop, and a conscious attitude towards life that will always serve you extremely well. And so the other side of it though is light energy, I guess is kind of what you would call it, and that is basically all of the positive motivations, like my absolute love of getting people to discover their next favorite book, or realize like heretofore like unrealized potential within themselves, things that when somebody comes to the realization that they're actually capable of so much more and they actually achieve it, they step out of their old life and into their new one, and they make like insane progress. I love that, and being able to sort of facilitate that in other people, I absolutely love doing that. And that motivation is what I would call light energy, right? And just the again, this is a conscious attitude towards life, moving towards growth and progress, and just actually loving what you do and putting everything into it, and doing it for doing it for the love of it. And like these are positive sort of lighter energies that you can bring to your work and your life. And I'm not entirely sure which side is more powerful, or if if the work of your life is to sort of to move away from the sort of darker motivations, or if you can use it sparingly without kind of spoiling yourself. And I'm not entirely sure, what the final answer is like. But I know that both of those sources of motivation are extremely powerful. And so thanks for bearing with me on that detour through my criminal history. But okay, so this book is one thing we talked about in the last masterclass, and one of the better books I've read so far this year, The Art of Impossible by Stephen Kotler. The reason I bring it up in this masterclass as well is because of something he calls the habit of ferocity. And I found this to be extremely important, again, over the past year. And it's basically where you rise to challenges instead of slinking away or slipping away from them, right? When things get difficult, it's very easy to take a sort of a more defensive posture and try and sort of take a step back and overthink. You get in your own head and you do exactly that. You overthink and you sort of second guess yourself, and you take a very long time to make decisions. And once you do kind of tentatively make a choice. It's not like the most decisive choice. You kind of like feel it out, and that's not the habit of ferocity. The habit of ferocity is taking something bad that happens to you, or some difficult challenge that's looming towards you, and actually going towards it, like moving, like attacking it, rather than like taking a more offensive posture, stance towards it, than holding back. And so it's very important, I think, to get into that sort of habit of ferocity, which does become a habit, right? Because like if you get in the habit of the opposite of ferocity, right? You're going to slink away from challenges. You're going to run up against something that's more difficult than you were expecting, and you're gonna quit. You're gonna stop before you're done, and like you're not gonna win, right? And like I don't see how you can achieve any sort of meaningful victory, at least on a repeat basis, other than having this sort of habit of ferocity, actually attacking challenges and not being overwhelmed by them. Like be bigger than your challenges, than what confronts you. And it's definitely a habit to get into. And it's again with the gym, right? Like you don't, like nobody is born with this sort of this habit or these attitudes, right? And like nobody is born with this ability to just go after everything, right? And to constantly sort of attack challenges, right? Or to even attempt to scale challenges that they've been unable to tackle before, right? So you have to sort of work up for it. Like you wouldn't show up at the gym the very first day and try and deadlift 400 pounds, right? You'd start with the bar, really, which 45 pounds, and you'd get your form right, and you'd sort of you build like a solid like foundation. You'd get the fundamentals right, then you'd add a few pounds to see how that feels, and sort of you'd watch yourself in the mirror and kind of correct your form, add a little bit of weight, progressive overload over time. And so like that is how over months, years, decades, you go from being a total beginner to being able to lift 135 pounds, and then 225, then 315, then 405. It's a process. Like you can't overload yourself at once. It's progressive overload, and like that shows up in the gym, that shows up in life. It's every single place you look for it. That's the answer. Like going to that place and going for more than you've been able to achieve thus far, and pushing that a little bit beyond, and so you build up for next time, and like that's literally how it's done. And like if you start doing that like consciously, repeatedly, you're going to be so much further ahead than every single person you could possibly be competing against, and you're just going to be. And maybe you don't even like, then you stop competing with anyone, and you're just so far ahead, and you're doing it for the pure joy of it, and to see how far you can go. And that's more of the light energy that I was talking about. So the habit of ferocity, very, very important habit to get into. And speaking of habits, there's a tendency to forget, right? And you really do, like, these are not the things or the kinds of things that you tell yourself once and then you automatically behave like this or think like this for the rest of your life. You have to constantly expose yourself to these ideas. So like the very first time I ever heard of Tom Platz was from this YouTube channel, and I can link to it, you guys to it, if you guys want. But it's called Machiavelli Motivation, and there are tons of these sort of bodybuilding channels on YouTube, and it's basically speeches or little clips from pro bodybuilders, and like video of them working out and set to epic music. It's kind of lame when I say it out loud, but I love these videos, and I've watched them basically every single day for years, maybe like 4 or 5 years at least. And when I'm eating, when I'm at the gym, I don't even listen to music at the gym anymore. I listen to videos from Machiavelli Motivation or like some others. And there are plenty of good ones, like I said, and to remind my mind, which, like, it's right in the word. You have to remind yourself of these ideas and cement them in your consciousness, or else you're not going to remember them. And I literally have a list of. I have several lists, of course. If you're at the note-taking masterclass, I'm such a big fan of lists. But I've lists of these fantastic ideas that I never want to forget, that I have to remind myself every single day, to achieve failure, to go the extra, like to go to that place, and I mean, I have a whole list of a list of them that they're all too dumb to repeat out loud, but they work for me. So you have to find something that works for you, and you have to sort of you have to remind yourself of it every single day, literally multiple times a day. I obviously listen to the videos. Just I don't even have to watch them at the same time. I listen to them and read the words. Just expose yourself to it again and again, and eventually they'll sink in. Then eventually you just keep you go further than you ever have before. And then you become like very slowly but steadily, surely, you become a totally different person. I am unrecognizable from the person that I was, and like how hard I worked or didn't work back then to today. Like after exposing myself to these ideas repeatedly, almost literally every single day for years and years and years, until it's a part of me, a part of how I do things, a part of how I live, a part of who I am. And you have to remind yourself of these ideas, because you can't trust your memory, right? And the last thing that I want to talk about here is doing your best. And I'm not gonna go for much longer here. I could talk a lot about doing your best, but it's such a deceptively simple subject or thing. Like, it's excellent advice, to do your best, but it's not particularly helpful, because I don't think that most people don't know what their best even even looks like. Like, they never even come close to doing their best, like in their entire lives. And I mean that, because I'm not even sure that I've ever. I mean, I have some days, but like there are times now that I consistently reach a new level of my absolute best, like when I give more than I ever thought that I was capable of giving, right? And like, most people just they never even get to that place. And like, that's not a knock against them. It's just not like the kind of ideas that they've been exposed to thus far. They've never actually like taken a step in belief and seeing what their best actually looks like. And like, they're missing out on so much growth, potential, achievement. All of these things that they want are on the other side of doing your actual best. And like, I'm fairly convinced that like it's almost impossible to fail if you do your best. Like, if you fail at something, it's probably because you didn't do your best. And like, that's a big statement, right? I mean, there are things that obviously outside of your control that that can cause you not to be successful, right? But the vast majority of cases, I don't see the effort being put forth. Like, if you actually put in the work to be your absolute best, I really, like, honestly and truly do not see how you could fail. And it's a multi-decade, lifelong process of actually like seeing what your best actually looks like. And like, but most people are not even conscious that they're not doing their best. They say, oh well, I did my best, but that's so patently untrue. Like, they didn't even come close. And also, like, what's the last thing that I want to talk about here with respect to doing your best is that, like, your best is literally the most that any other person can ask from you. So like, it's quite literally the absolute most that you could ever give. And if you, like, no matter what the result ends up being, if you can honestly believe, like, if you like, when you've done your best and when you haven't, if you can leave the gym, leave the office, leave whatever arena, so to speak, that you're in, and you can honestly, tell yourself that you did your absolute best, then whatever it says on the proverbial scoreboard will never make you a loser. If you did your absolute best, then you're just if you did everything it takes to be your absolute best, then you're a goddamn winner. And it doesn't matter what the results were, what ended up happening, what wasn't under your control, like things that just accidents, other events. If something happens that causes you to still lose, even though you did your best, that does not make you a loser. The only thing that makes you a loser is not doing your best in the first place. And that's something that I've come to believe it's been hammered into me from, like, from bodybuilding, from business, and just my entire life. Every single time that I've done my best, I leave feeling proud of myself, what I've done. And odds are, and funny enough how this works, when I do my best, I usually end up winning. So, you have to do, like, whatever it takes to do your very best.
All these people wanna hate, fine, I'ma make mine. While you sitting there complaining, I'll be training. While you sitting there just waiting, I'm creating. Yeah. Sometimes I think that I'm unstoppable.